the O as the aura and the ring pass not. Just as the square is the symbol of the four sacred forces or powers, tetracties, so the circle shows the boundary within infinity that no man, even in spirit, or deva or Dayan Chohan, can cross. Applied to man, the O symbolizes the sacred auric egg which envelopes him like the yolk of an egg by the albumen and shell. This, to the perceptions of higher beings from other planes, makes of each individuality an oval sphere of more or less radiancy. The esoteric teaching is that after its involution into matter, the evolution of each soul takes place along a spiral pathway within a series of concentric spheres of differing densities, whose centers are all within the physical shell, corresponding to the concentric globes forming the earth chain, the finer interpenetrating all the denser. Since the law followed by the cosmic is also followed by the individual manifestation, we refer the reader to what we have said elsewhere concerning those interpenetrating spheres, as it describes the corresponding makeup of man's aura. When the soul has manifested the most essential and characteristic possibilities of the smallest, inmost, and densest sphere of the aura, it breaks through that confining shell following a spiral path, and is born into a larger sphere of consciousness, being or orbit of evolution, whose forces will aid in perfecting and completing the possibilities of the former sphere. For instance, as long as man's consciousness responds only to the sense impressions from the physical world, he is confined within that sphere of matter and consciousness which vibrates to the physical plane. But as soon as his sense organs are attuned to the vibrations of the next finer and larger sphere of substance and consciousness, which surrounds and interpenetrates the lesser, he is born into the astral world or sphere of his aura, called the Hall of Learning, and so on into the still higher spheres. Only when man is able to vibrate in unison with all the spheres which surround him, and has brought into expression the potencies of them all, has he completed his evolution of man as man. Physical man, and the physical globe, like a seed or egg, therefore contains within him, in germ, all the forces, powers, and materials necessary for him to manifest his godlike possibilities. But this physical seed of the real man stands in the center of 7 concentric spheres, in each of which certain of his possibilities must manifest. And to evolve into and manifest in these various spheres the shell of his physical limitations, like the shell of the egg or seed, must be opened through the growth of the germ already present within that shell. To more fully explain this point and emphasize the importance of the teaching, we quote from the voice of Isis. Undeveloped man responds chiefly to the vibrations of the physical globe, those things which he can see, hear, taste, handle, etc., and cannot comprehend or function in the globes belonging to the psychic and spiritual planes. Man must ultimately function and gain experience on all 7 globes at the same time, checking up, balancing and perfecting the experience of one by that gained on the other, thus rounding out his 7-fold nature into the real man. Only thus can he gain mastery over the portion of goods given him by his Father in heaven. As it contains in potentiality all that his later evolution can unfold in any one cycle of manifestation, man's aura may be compared to a schoolboy's trunk packed for a distant journey, for it contains all the goods given him by his Father, together with the provisions necessary for the journey itself. The aura is called the luminous egg, or the invisible magnetic sphere in which every man is enveloped. It is the direct emanation, from the atmic ray in its triple aspect of creator, preserver, and destroyer, and from Buddhimanas. The seventh aspect of this individual aura is the faculty of assuming the form of its body and becoming the radiant, the luminous augoids. It is this, strictly speaking, which at times becomes the form called Mayavirupa. It is also the material from which the adept forms his astral bodies, from the augoids and the Mayavirupa downwards. Just as the decimal system was formerly esoteric, so was all information concerning the nature of the aura until some time after the teachings concerning it were brought to the Western world by Madame Blavatsky. There is always, however, a good reason for thus guarding certain truths from one generation and revealing them to a subsequent. Since the days of the Atlanteans, when much dangerous knowledge was extant concerning the performance of magic, the aura has been known to be the storehouse of the forces called into activity in magical procedures. And because of the degrading use made of this knowledge by those who used it unlawfully, those who faithfully follow their divine instructors are carefully taught the responsibility incurred by those who publicly give out information likely to bring upon mankind a catastrophe similar to that which destroyed Atlantis. But in the present age, when there is a tendency among certain classes of scholars to decry the existence or possibility of what is called magic and belittle the necessity of understanding the mysteries, it is the policy of the great teachers to stimulate such lines of investigation by revealing certain ancient truths long hidden from the general public. The great law today is just as inexorable as in former ages, and no firebrand of esoteric knowledge will be given directly to man. The way to the higher knowledge may be pointed out. The great teachers may say, "Search here," but only the diligent and the pure in heart, the true and the faithful will be given knowledge which, in the hands of the ignorant, the ambitious, or the impure, might be turned to the injury and degradation of the race. This is why only by the general advance of the race can the hidden things of one cycle, as evolution unfolds mankind, become the revealed of succeeding cycles. It is the same law by which the inner and hidden petals of a rose are revealed only as the flower as a whole advances in its unfoldment. And just as the evolving soul steps over his ring pass, not only as he vibrates to the rate of the larger sphere, so with the race. As we have said elsewhere, in another sense the circle is the ring pass not which every true disciple should put around himself, and whose gates he must open and close at will to admit or exclude that which he chooses. This ring is a boundary which separates each of the concentric spheres mentioned above from the next finer, but is a ring pass not to the substance and consciousness of the denser sphere only until the vibrations of the latter have been raised to harmonize or become one with the rate of the finer sphere, whereupon there is no barrier between the two. It is because of this ring pass not, like a shell around every sphere, that at every decisive step from one sphere of consciousness to the next higher, the student is met with the axiom "Know thyself." For the knowledge of the self must include a knowledge of how to raise the vibrations of the sphere in which the aspirant is manifesting until they become one with those of the higher sphere which he desires to enter. Each student must live his life from within and unfold his possibilities through his own efforts and through the bringing into manifestation of the powers which each has in potentiality within. This is the basic reason why we oppose all negative forms of abnormally breaking through the ring by the aid of alcohol, drugs, or psychic forces invoked while in a negative state. As we have explained elsewhere, another way in which the doors are frequently broken open is by placing yourself in a passive, non-resisting state and making the demand for psychic experiences, or sitting for development as it is called. In this practice, you are placing yourself in such a negative state that any entity dwelling even on the lower astral plane can help you break open the doors. This either destroys the doors or abnormally forces the development of the psychic centers instead of unfolding them as a natural accompaniment of spiritual growth. In one sense, the aura is the Holy Ghost, the sin against which is the perversion of the auric forces and the destruction of the centers. While each individual and each globe has its ring pass knot, it is the ring pass knot of the cosmos which is referred to in the quotation which heads this chapter, and also in the following: no spirits except the recorders have ever crossed the forbidden line of the ring, nor will any do so until the day of the next pralaya. For it is the boundary that separates the finite, however infinite in man's sight, from the truly infinite. From all that has been said, we see that the O, as a symbol of the source from which all manifestation proceeds, is no arbitrary or man-made symbol, but is inherent in nature herself. Therefore, let the circle remind you that you have the potency and power of the unmanifested overshadowing you, that you are dwelling in a mighty sphere of unmanifested powers which it is your duty to understand, unfold, and bring into manifestation ere you can pass through the evolution of the numerals and reach the perfection of your cycle of manifestation in number 10. Let it remind you of the source from whence you have received the portion of goods given you by your Father in heaven ere you took your journey into this far country of material embodiment, and that these goods are the materials out of which you must furnish your mansion in heaven, or the immortal, spiritual vehicle which you must ultimately attain ere you can manifest the real self or the God within on all planes. Chapter 5. The infinite was entirely unknown and diffused no light before the luminous point violently broke through into vision. Zohar. The monad, or point, is the original and is the unit from which follows the entire numeral system. The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky, I. 459-60. The point within the circle is a symbol which must be considered both with the O and the 1, as it is the connecting link between the two. The dot within the circle is the first manifestation of the latent deity or deity in activity, the first cause, unity within eternity, the first differentiation from the homogeneous state represented by the circle. In the metaphysical world, the circle with its one central point in it has no number, and is called Anapatika, parentless and numberless, for it can fall under no calculation. It is a center of energy, which I shall for the present call the Logos. It is called the Verbum by the Christians, and it is the divine Christos who is eternal in the bosom of his Father. In him is an illimitable abyss of glory, and from it there goeth forth one little spark which mocketh all the glory of the sun, and of the moon, and of the stars. The dot within the circle is the causal soul or personal God of each individual, while the higher self is the causal soul enriched by the experiences garnered by the personalities in which it incarnates life after life, and stored up as individuality in the higher self. In the individual man, the dot is the manifestation of the ray shot out in the beginning from one of the 7 Elohim, and becomes the creative dot in that individual, which remains throughout the entire kalpa as a nucleus and overshadowing principle. This dot periodically sends down its one ray into manifestation through a personality. For a ray must incarnate again and again until all the experiences represented by the cycle of numbers from 1 to 9 are stored up in the higher self. Thus the dot and the 1 with the O together make the higher self. It is the potency of this, and all the numbers, stimulated by the overshadowing of the dot itself, which causes their evolution or unfoldment. In turn, this, in the individual, is overshadowed by the causal soul of the universe. This is not the absolute or causeless cause, the fathomless eternal, but is that which the Christians call God, the Lord, and the Hindus Ishvara, the Lord. If we consider the dot as a bright flame in the center of a circle, or say the pure white light of the sun in the center of the zodiac, as the sun sends forth its rays, they manifest the 7 colors of the spectrum, and as each ray touches the circumference it makes a dot of its own color. The sun in the center will therefore represent the higher self or the divine, while the many lesser dots on the circumference will represent its many personalities, each manifesting but one shade of the central light, and each becoming pure white light only as all are indrawn into the center. The entire circle will then become a globe of pure white radiance and take its place in turn as a dot upon the circumference of a still mightier circle whose center is God. In the case of an avatar, it is this overshadowing, or causal soul of the universe which sends into manifestation the One, the Son, who, united with the Father, becomes not one of the 7 rays or flames, but the one great ray in which all the 7 rays are united. Hence all avatars are like pearls strung on this mighty manifestation of the one God, just as all the lives of an individual are strung upon the individualized ray from one of the 7 Elohim, the higher self. Speaking of an ancient record written on palm leaves and illustrating the symbology of primordial beginnings, Madame Blavatsky says, on the first page in an immaculate white disk within a dull black ground. On the following page, the same disk, cut with a central point. The first, the student knows, represents cosmos and eternity, before the reawakening of still slumbering energy, the emanation of the world in later systems. The point in the hitherto immaculate disk, space and eternity in Pralaya, denotes the dawn of differentiation. It is the point in the mundane egg, the germ within it which will become the universe, the all, the boundless, periodical cosmos. The O is the universal hieroglyph of the sun in the center of the zodiac, the manifester and giver of light, life and energy to its system. It also represents Jacob in the midst of his 12 sons and Jesus in the midst of his 12 disciples. Among the Egyptians, the dot or sun is Ra, and in the Book of the Dead is thus described, I am Ra at his first appearance. I am the great God, self-reproduced, his names together compose the cycle of the gods. O-Ra, in thine egg, who risest up in thine orb, and shinest from thine horizon. In a later chapter Ra makes a prayer as follows, I shine forth out of the egg which is in the unseen world. Let not mine hand be repulsed by the divine circle of the great God. I am come to do the will of my heart, out of the abode of flame, which I extinguished when I came forth. This symbol also has its reflection or correspondence in nature as the nucleus in the egg. The nucleus has the same significance as the dot in the sun, i.e., the source of life to its system, for without the vitalizing, creative power emanating from its nucleus no egg could be fructified or developed. The Druids taught this same mystery by their symbolic dance around what later came to be the maypole. As we have said elsewhere, in the later symbolism the dance was performed around the sacred oak, and still later, if an oak was not available, the masculine principle of fire or the sun was symbolized by the upright maypole, while the feminine principle was indicated by the circle drawn on the ground, the two having the same significance as a creative symbol as the dot within the circle or the lingam and the yoni, all of which later became. Therefore, Just as the Christian ceremonies of Easter bring to our mind the great cosmic fact of the resurrection of the sun or the renewal of the life force of nature from the tomb of winter, as well as the personal significance of the resurrection of the Christ in each heart, so the bonfires and maypoles, with their attendant dances and ceremonials, had the same double significance and symbolized the same grand truths to the early inhabitants of Ireland, Britain, and Gaul, i.e., that the masculine principle of fire had again descended to fructify Mother Earth that she might bring forth her increase. The dot in the center is always a small circle in the old picture writing, and its present name as the dot names the gift god. In the Indian Sign Language, the interior small circle names the son of the mother, or any descendant, which is its meaning today in the Celtic alphabet. Philosophy, however, could never have found its conception of a logical, universal, and absolute deity if it had had no mathematical point within the circle upon which to base its speculations. It is only the manifested point, lost to our senses after its pregenetic appearance in the infinitude and incognizability of the circle, that makes a reconciliation between philosophy and theology possible, on condition that the latter should abandon its crude, materialistic dogmas. We may think of our aura as a circle, but we should think of our higher self as the dot or God within this circle, the manifested source from whence emanates the light, life, and love of our existence. And only because of that source within have we the power to bring into manifestation and evolve the inchoate forces which we find within the circle of our being. Hence only when we realize and manifest the power of the indwelling creative to bring forth and use, to the limits of our circle of manifestation, all that is contained therein, can we become the true I. Every unit of life is the center or dot of its own universe, has its own sphere of activity and influence and rate of vibration, and is its own center of cosmic energy. A microcosm, an individualized reflection in time and space of the one life of the O. The dot may also be looked upon as the spiritual star of initiation which overshadows the candidate from the time when the spiritual light broke through into vision or was born in his consciousness. But we become aware of it only when we look toward it, feel its life-giving warmth, and see its light streaming down upon us and forming the straight and narrow path that leadeth unto salvation. Looked at from above, the dot is seen to be the end of the axis of a sphere, or an aspect of number one. It appears within the circle when the World Mother breathes upon the waters of chaos. Let the dot within the circle remind you that no matter how dark and chaotic the circle of your life may seem, you have within you the dot of pure, white, spiritual light, the sun of your soul whose rays can unfold and illumine every condition in your life and help you to manifest their highest possibilities, if you will but open the door of your heart and let them in. But only as you fearlessly and determinedly and from the Christ consciousness within say, "Let there be light," understanding all that this implies, and all that will result, can its force start the circle of darkness or chaos in your spiritual life to revolving, and the Spirit of God, the white dot or dove, move on the troubled waters of your life and evolve into the one, and then on through the rest of the decade back to oneness with the O in the number 10. Do not be appalled at that which the light reveals within you, for the so-called things of evil, those which are unredeemed, will first be stirred up that they may come into the light and be transmuted, spiritualized, and redeemed. Remember the divine dot or spiritual sun within must shine if evolution is to take place.